When you're out in the wilderness, you're out in the outdoors, probably the most important thing you need is shelter. And I've got Dan Wowack of Cold Cracker Bushcraft, and we're gonna be talking about shelter and campsites and all that. What do we need to think about with campsites right off the bat?
Well, when you first get into camp in the evening, you want to start looking around at a few different things. First, we want to think about our location of exactly where we're going to set up camp, because it's important that we understand wind direction. We don't want the wind blowing in our face, especially when we're using a tarp shelter.
Right.
We also want to look up and look around and make sure there's no dead trees that can fall on us and injure us while we're at camp. We also want to make sure that we're in an area that we have plenty of firewood for colder weather, and we also want to make sure there's a water source close. So if it becomes a more stationary camp, we have a good supply of water that we can bring into camp rather than trekking further out.
Probably other kind of dangers than falling trees. What else kind of comes to mind?
So we want to make sure that we're not in an area that can flash flood. If we're close to a river and it was raining, we don't want anything to flood us out. We want to look around the area for any type of poison ivy or poison hemlock that might be in the area, so we're not laying in that all night. If it's the summertime, we need to think about snakes, and depending on what region we're in, we need to also think about animals, and do we have protection from that if something's going to come into our camp.
So what about our spot here?
So this looks like a pretty good spot. We were looking around here right before we started this video. No widowmakers, so nothing that can fall on us. We have water source not too far away. Good supply of firewood all throughout here, so I think that we're in a really good area.
So what do we need for our shelter?
So this shelter is super simple. It can get packed in your bedroll. All that we have is a tarp and a few pieces of rope, and that's all we're going to need. Tent pegs and toggles we can make right off the landscape here.
Great. So let's get started. So let's look at our exact materials we got here.
So we have an oilskin tarp.
Okay.
And this is a square tarp.
How
This is
big is it?
8 foot by 8 foot.
Okay.
So this is a good size for not only one person, but you can put multiple people under this if it's really inclement weather.
Right.
And then what you're holding, we have some hemp rope.
Right.
So that'll always work well. I have a little bit of twine because in the backcountry you might not always have a lot of rope, so you got to make do. So we'll use a little bit of cordage. And then one thing I didn't bring was tent pegs. So we have to make that off the landscape. So 2 styles of tent pegs you can make is take a Y branch and just cut it in this fashion, and when you drive it down, it'll hook it in place. The second is just a straight stick with a 7-notch cut, and this will work just as well. And I always like to also have some toggles, which are just straight pieces of wood, just to pull some sections of the tarp out.
Okay. And how much does that tarp weigh, you know?
That tarp weighs about 3.5 to 4 pounds.
Oh yeah, so you're not carrying too much. That'll fit right in your pack.
Yep, and a good thing with the tarp, it's super versatile, which I'm going to show you in a second. So not only can you set up a lean-to configuration, but we'll look at a plow point for more adverse weather conditions. The first shelter that we're going to set up is a lean-to, and this works really well just for all types of weather conditions. We just want to make sure when we set up that the wind is coming back. We want the shelter to take the brunt of the weather.
Right.
So in front of the lean-to then, we can set our fire, and we'll have a good open area that if it's adverse weather, we can work, anything like that. So the way we set this up is we come from waist level. Everybody's going to be a little bit different, but around waist level is best. There are a ton of different ways you can work your cordage to actually tie this up, but I'm going to show you a really easy way today. So waist level, we're going to just take that thinner piece of cordage and just wrap it around the tree like this, and we're going to tie a basic shoelace bow right on here.
Right, so we can untie it quickly.
So we can untie it and we can be on our way with it. Really easy. Now we're going to come across the front of this, and we're going to grab a second piece of our hemp rope, and we have tie outs on here, so I'm just going to run it through one of these tie out points.
Okay.
And I'm going to bring that to this tree. Same setup on this tree. I'm just going to pull that nice and taut, wrap it around, and tie that shoelace knot again. And we have the beginning of our shelter setup. Next, we need to put the tent pegs in. So John, if you want to pull your side first to get a good and taut, nice and tight and back. There you go. And then I'll tighten my side out real good and taut. Now, as you see, we are starting to have a shelter, but that middle sag is going to be a little bit of a problem.
Yeah, it might fill with rain or whatever.
Yep, so I'm just going to take a toggle on my center tie-out point with an extra piece of rope, and I can run that back to a tree that's really close here.
Right.
And then when I pull that, you can see we got a lot of lift on the inside. So it gives us way more room, and it's going to help run that water off of there.
Yeah.
And this could just get tied off real simply, however you wish to tie this off. And then we have ourselves a nice, easy shelter that's quick to set up and easy to set up.
That looks great.
Now we already had the lean-to set up, tied off to one tree. So I took the rope down. Now we can actually just stake out the 3 corners and lift the center, and we have a plow point configuration for more adverse weather. So the first part of a plow point is always the back corner away from the tree. You want to get good tension on that. So I'm going to stake this out first, pulling it good and tight and driving that stake in. Okay. And then both of us can stake out each side just in a diamond or configuration. And then simply again, see we have that little bit of sag. I could just bring my rope around a tree that's in the back and begin to lift that up. And that's going to give us more height inside to do whatever we need to do while we're in the field.
And probably this arrangement of having a tree right here is really important. Is there any other thing we can do if we don't have a tree just in the right location?
If we don't have a tree, we can always put a tripod right in this back section and run it over the tripod. That would help tremendously.
So we could have a tripod here, and it's our temporary tree,
It's
right?
our temporary tree.
Okay, perfect. Well, Dan, I want to thank you for bringing these important skills, these techniques for making shelter with just the bare minimum of materials. I mean, just a tarp, a little bit of rope, a couple of tent stakes cut from the woods. Thank you so much for bringing these important things to us. If you're interested in learning about how to survive in the outdoors, about bushcraft, about woods, and surviving in that kind of situation, you definitely want to check out his YouTube channel, Coalcracker Bushcraft. He's also got an outdoor school. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, the outdoor school is the Appalachian Bushman School of Coalcracker Bushcraft. So we're located in eastern Pennsylvania, right in the heart of Appalachian Mountains.
So we'll put a link down in the description section so that you can go and find out more information about that. Thank you so much, Dan, for bringing this.